In today's video we're gonna use the LMG Boom, do some tests on the dummy for the first section, then we'll go back to basics, how the damage is calculated, how the critical damage is calculated, the weak spot damage, in order to better understand the numbers, so we know how to prioritize the stats on our gear. And in the third section we will talk about the weapons, the gear, the armor pieces, the mods, and the stats that you want to have on them after you understood the numbers. So let's get started. First, let's check the main weapon, and that is the Boom, what we have on it. So we have a tier 5 legendary Boom, calibrated at +10. I'm using tungsten ammo, and as a calibration I have fire rate plus 7.5%, accuracy minus 50%, fire rate increased for additional 7.5% after continuous firing for 2 seconds. I took this calibration because of the crit rate. As you can see, I get another 11.6 crit rate chance, and this will be in total, let's equip the weapon, 36.6 crit rate. My critical damage for now is 99%, but it will go up because all the mods and items that I have will go through each a bit later. Okay, so now let's use only the main weapon to see how much damage we can do without any other weapons, bonuses, or deviants. So of course I'm trying to aim only for the head because that's the weak spot and do the most damage there. Went up to 23, around 23,000 DPS, and a total of 420k damage, 25 I guess, yeah. So this is the total damage. The target is still burning, but it will stop. Okay, so this is only the main weapon. Now let's see how we can improve on this, because we are using the crossbow, the purple crossbow here. This crossbow has a special feature that when you hit a weak spot will inflict the bullseye effect on the target, causing all weapons to have a crit rate by 15% versus the targets that have the bullseye effect. The bullseye effect also gives vulnerability to the target by 8% for 12 seconds. This means that the target will take an additional damage. So getting back to our testing, we will hit the target with the crossbow and get another 15% critical rate, and we will also apply vulnerability to the dummy if we hit a weak spot. Now the DPS is around 30,000 DPS, and the total damage will be around 533,000 damage. For the bow I'm using vulnerability amplifier. The bullseye adds vulnerability plus 8%, so it will be a total of 16% vulnerability applied on the target. So we have two options for this build. One is the Pyro Dino. It will attack your targets and also will give you an extra bonus to the blaze effect, so the burn effect, by 24.5%. So let's try use all the methods and see what damage we can get on the dummy. The damage that I'm doing and also the dino, the DPS went to 39,000. I'm gonna unsummon now. So we had 39,000 DPS, and the total damage is 775,000 damage. The bonus that you'll receive for the blaze, this 24.5%, depends on the skill rating of your deviant. So in order to get a higher percentage here, you'll need to find a better deviant. The second option for the deviant is the Lone Wolf's Whisper. This deviant attacks the targets and also takes aggro from nearby enemies. When the target dies, it spawns a clone, so you'll have multiple wolves on the battlefield, and increases the weapon damage received by the attacked target by 37%. As you can see, this percentage is higher because my skill rating for this deviant is 4, so it has a better percentage. It also has Growing Pains, max deviant power plus 50%, which means that I can use the deviant for a longer period of time. Okay, so now let's try to use this deviant and try to use all the buffs that we can to see the maximum damage that we can get. I'm gonna summon the wolf, use the bow, and then use the machine gun to see the damage. As you can see, it went to 48,000 DPS. It was one more hit from the wolf, but it still went to 38,000 DPS and 800,000 total damage. I usually don't use the crossbow when doing dungeons, silos, monoliths, and even when fighting normal enemies. But what I'm using most of the time is this legendary sniper rifle. Now it's called Bingo after the latest patch, but before it was called the Bullseye. With this weapon you have 70% chance to trigger the bullseye effect on a weak spot hit, but what I'm normally using is, after switching to this weapon, the first hit will trigger the bullseye effect. So if you're switching from your main to the secondary, apply the debuff, the bullseye, and then switch back to your normal weapon, to your main weapon. This will apply no matter where you hit the enemy. Some enemies don't have weak spots, and for some enemies it's really hard to get a weak spot hit, like the spider boss, which you have to go behind her to shoot her in the back to get that weak spot hit. This also grants weak spot damage plus 15% on hit for 10 seconds. Effect can stab up to 3 times, but you basically only use this sniper rifle to hit once. And using the same mod to add extra vulnerability. So my normal damage in combat will be something like this. So around 43,000 DPS and around 740 something thousand total damage. Why I do like the sniper rifle better is that you have more bullets before you have to reload, and for the crossbow it's really difficult to reload each time, especially if you miss one shot. Now we'll go into the second section of this video and talk about how the damage is calculated and why you should prioritize some aspects, some stats on your gear, and some you should prioritize less. If you already know how the damage is calculated, the base damage, critical damage, headshot damage, and so on, and you want to see only the gear and mods, you can skip ahead using the chapters to that section. Okay, now that we removed all the gear and we also removed the mod on the weapon, let's start doing the math. So this weapon is at tier 5 calibrated as +10, so it does 374 base damage. This is with copper LMG ammo, so we don't have any other bonus from the ammo. As you can see here is 375, I'm not sure why it's rounded like that, but we will use this damage number as the base damage. When we change the ammo, you'll see that the base damage here changes, so the ammo bonus is included in this number. So we'll use 413 as a base bullet damage. I have created a spreadsheet in order to help better understand how the math works and where the numbers come from. Next, the other thing that will boost the damage for the bullets is the weapon damage bonus. As you can see here, I have 20% weapon damage bonus, and this is one Cradle bonus that we have here. Damage 20% when holding SMG, rifles or LMGs, which is the case for us. So this is where this damage bonus comes from. Now let's add this 20% to the formula. That means that the bullet, the weapon damage for us will be 495.6. If we shoot the dummy in the torso, we'll see that we do 471 normal damage. Well, we said that we should do around 495. What's going on? Well, the dummy has a resistance when you shoot at it with some weapons. I have tested with pistols, assault rifles and LMG, and it has a 5% resistance, but not with sniper rifle. We have the weapon damage, which is 495.6. We don't have any damage against enemy bonus, but we will do later and we will calculate this. So we have the normal damage, and if we subtract the 5% dummy resistance, we have the damage done to the dummy, which is the normal damage minus this 5%, or you can multiply by 0.95%, and it is 470.82. All the damage is rounded, so you will see 471, which is what we see here as the damage. Let's do the next calculation, and that is the critical damage. So you see that we have a critical damage bonus of 30%. we want to take into consideration the crit rate. Basically, this is the chance that you have to do a critical damage. The higher the crit chance, the more successful you'll be to actually shoot critical damage. But how it's calculated? The critical damage bonus is 30%. We'll put the critical bonus here, 30%, and the critical damage will be actually the damage done to the dummy, 471, multiplied by 130%, or you can multiply by 1.3, or you can do the damage done to the dummy, multiplied by 1 plus the critical bonus. So it is 612. Let's test this. We can see we do 612 critical damage. Seems that our math is correct so far. Let's proceed further. Now let's test the headshot damage. If we go to our character, we see that we have weak spot damage, 40%. And this percentage comes from the weapon, both the critical damage and the weak spot damage. So let's add this 40% here. And the headshot damage will be the damage done to the dummy, so this one here, multiplied by 140%. Or you can add it like this, multiply by 1 plus the headshot damage. That means the normal headshot damage will be 659, and we'll make sure that this is rounded every time. So we have 659 as headshot damage. Let's test 659. The red is the weak spot damage. So our math is correct again. So in order to calculate the headshot critical damage, we will have to multiply the dummy damage by 1 plus critical bonus plus headshot bonus. In other words, the damage done to the dummy multiplied by 170%. So we add these two, we do not multiply them, we add them. So we have 70% plus the 100%, we will get to 800 headshot critical damage. As you can see, it is 800 headshot critical damage. Okay, now let's add the random weapon mod that adds weapon damage and also adds damage against normal enemies, because the dummy is considered normal enemy, but damage against normal enemies is calculated the same as damage against elites and damage against great ones, but of course you need to have the proper target. So let's add this random weapon mod. So now we have the weapon damage bonus 23.6, and we also have a damage bonus to against common enemies 2%. So we add the damage against a specific enemy in the equation, and now the normal damage in our formula, it will be multiplied by this damage against enemy. And now we should do 495 normal damage, right? And we also should do critical damage 643, which is also correct. Headshot damage 693 and critical headshot damage 841. I'm explaining how the damage works because it's important for you to know how this works in order to prioritize the stats in the best way possible. If you want the entire formula, it is the weapon based damage multiplied by the weapon damage bonus multiplied by the damage against the enemies and minus the dummy resistance, the 5%. Another thing to take into consideration is the stats that are only specific for the weapon that you use. So for example, the weak spot damage and critical damage 40% and 30% are only for this weapon. If I switch the weapon, you'll see that I don't have these numbers, but I do have these numbers here. So we have weak spot damage 95% and we have critical damage 26%. Also, on the main weapon, we have a weapon damage of 3.6% and damage against normal enemies by 2% increase. But as you can see, when we have the sniper rifle equipped, we don't have those bonuses. So the mods that you use on specific weapons only apply the stats when you are using that weapon and not if you only have it equipped. Okay, so knowing how the damage is calculated for normal damage, critical damage, headshot damage and headshot critical damage, we will talk about how to prioritize these stats on your gear. Take into account that for each build that you have, these priorities can change in different circumstances. So for example, if you're gonna use a mod that will prevent you for crit, then you have taken the crit damage of the table, so you don't have to invest in it. Or there are different variations if you're running build with fire where you need to prioritize psi intensity, or you have fast gunner and so on. Okay, so let's set priorities. Weapon based damage is the damage that your weapon does. So basically you need to increase the damage by calibrating it to +10. This is a no-brainer. This should be 0 priority. Weapon damage bonus multiplies your damage no matter where you shoot, so this should be priority 1. After that, critical bonus. Critical bonus should be your second priority and stack as much as possible, but also make sure that you have enough critical rate in order for you to benefit from this bonus. I would say around 30% is a nice critical rate bonus, but if you can even more, go for it. Critical bonus should be your second priority because no matter if you hit a weak spot or no, critical hits can still proc and you'll still get a critical bonus. Weak spot damage, I would say to be your third priority. And for the damage against enemies, I will also put it as a third priority because it is really good. It applies the bonus to the damage no matter if you crit or not, if you hit a weak spot or not, but you'll only get the bonus if you have like damage against normal enemies towards the normal enemies, bonus against elites when you're fighting elites, and bonus against great ones when you're fighting bosses. Okay, so now let's talk about the boom boom and the burn damage. If we go to the boom boom and go to the burn, we will see that deals 10% psi intensity status damage every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds, up to 5 stacks. The additional damage is blaze, cannot crit, cannot strike weak spot, and will not decay with distance. So basically burn damage is a fixed number that can be easily calculated by this formula. So we have 10% multiplied by the psi intensity, multiplied by the burn damage factor bonus, and multiplied by the burn final damage bonus. I think these names were translated bad, but basically these two are the status damage bonus and the burn damage bonus. I have put them in the spreadsheet and we will calculate them in a moment. So let's see. So first of all, we have the psi intensity, which is 800. Yeah, we have 800 here. The burn damage will be 10% of the psi intensity, and this is the base burn damage. And then we will need to apply the damage against enemies bonus, and this one is damage against common enemies, 44%. We have this already here. Then the damage will be 115. So we have the base damage multiplied by the damage against enemies. Then we have the status bonus, and this one is over here. It is 40%. And then burn bonus if we have any, and this is blaze elemental damage bonus, which is 30%. And that means that we should do, if we round this up with no decimals, 210 burn damage. Let's see, 210 burn damage. Okay, now let's talk about the weapons, the pieces of armor, and the mods and their stats, what I'm using right now. So we have the boom boom. It has 18% chance to trigger burn on hit. Killing an enemy affected by burn causes an explosion that deals blaze damage of 300% psi intensity. The explosion inflicts 1 stack of burn on other hits and also adds a blaze damage bonus. So the calibration that I'm using right now for the boom boom is the rapid shot style, fire rate 7.5%, increase accuracy -50, fire rate 7.5 after continuous firing for 2 seconds, critical rate 5.5%, and another critical rate 6.1%. This was from a purple blueprint. I'm still trying to find a better one. Having -50 accuracy with a LMG is not the ideal case, but it does do the job. For the accessories, I tried to prioritize stability, so I went for the stability +19, the hammer compensator. For the optics, compact reflex sight, stability +12%, also gives some extra bonuses there. For tactics, you can go for stability +15 over here with infrared indicator, or you can go for the accuracy. This will give you 90%. And if you are close to the enemies, you can actually use more stability and less accuracy, because low accuracy will spread your bullets if you are far away from the enemies and some of your bullets won't hit. But if you are close enough, you can actually hit with all the bullets, and you will only need stability to have a lower recoil so your weapon won't pull up when you fire. And for the magazine, I went with the large LMG drum mag, which increases the magazine capacity by 20 but decreases the speed by 20. For the mods, I'm using the embers. When burn is removed, stacks only minus 50%, and this goes well with the gloves that I have, and I'm gonna show you in a moment. I haven't upgraded this mod because I'm trying to find a better one, but it's difficult for me to find legendary mods right now because my server is actually in phase 2, so we don't have phase 3 unlocked to be able to do at least hard mode dungeons. So we'll try to farm some mods in the next phase. But this is the core effects that I'm using. If I find better attributes effect, I will use those. At the moment, I cannot even use the mod conversion to craft some other mods because I need to find legendary versions, and it's easier in the next phase or the phase after that when we have pro difficulty and I can get guaranteed legendary mods. So this is not an option yet. I'm still looking for better mods. This mod works well with the hardy gloves. These gloves have a unique effect. At full stack, burn will cause an explosion, dealing blaze damage of 300% PSI intensity and remove all stacks of burn. But having this mod means that the stacks will only decrease by 50%, and I will be able to apply more stacks faster to get to the maximum stacks and trigger another explosion of 300 PSI intensity. So when using these gloves, I don't lose all the stacks, I only lose half of them because of that mod. For the secondary weapon, you can use the sniper rifle with the bullseye effect that triggers after switching to this weapon, or you can go, if you want, to the other option, which is the recurve crossbow. And if you use this crossbow, hitting a weak spot will inflict the bullseye effect, and also you will get 15% critical rate bonus versus that target. The mod that I'm using for the secondary weapon is the vulnerability amplifier violent. The bullseye adds vulnerability plus 8% with additional critical damage and damage against elite and weapon damage, but these stats only apply when using the sniper rifle, remember that. For the gear, at the moment I'm using the scout hood and the scout jacket to get the 2-piece bonus weapon damage plus 8%. For the headpiece mod, I'm using the momentum up violent, critical rate 10% for the first 50% of the magazine, and weapon damage plus 30% for the next 50% of the magazine, with critical damage and weapon damage and damage against normal enemies. This is upgraded at maximum level. For the jacket, I'm using this mod here, but not for the core effect, but for the attributes effects. The critical damage plus 12%, damage against normal enemies plus 10%, weapon damage plus 3.6%, and maximum HP 2.4%. I could use any other mod for the chest piece that will give me better stats, because the core mods for the chest piece don't actually improve your damage, but will more likely give you a boost to HP or damage reduction. I'm also using the Lone Wolf mask, shoes and pants. The bonus that I get is 10% magazine capacity, critical rate increased by 5%, and as a third bonus, every 2 crits I get 1 stack of Lone Shadow. Lone Shadow will give critical damage 6% for 30 seconds, and the effect can stack up to 8 times. For the mask, I'm using the targeted strike, critical rate plus 10%, critical damage plus 25%, weapon damage, damage against normal enemies, magazine capacity. For the shoes, taking no damage within 4 seconds will grant 20% melee damage, weapon damage and status damage, so we get 20% weapon damage for our bullets and 20% damage to the burn damage. So we get this bonus twice. and also critical damage, damage against great ones, magazine capacity, and some HP. And for the pants, critical hit by non-melee weapons, grant 5% critical damage up to 45%. So I get another 45% critical damage, plus 9% from the attribute effects, weapon damage 6%, and damage against normal enemies. Some of the stats are seen here, but some of the stats will only appear after we shoot. So let's do a test. So if we look now, the critical damage went to 192%. Before we go to the Cradle skills, this server is hard difficulty and has the deviant, invasion, void, and regen. So we have some Cradle specific skills, and I am actually using one of them. So first of all, we have 20% extra damage. Then I'm using the anti-void rifle to be able to kill monsters with anomaly void. I'm also using the deviation master. While deviation is present, damage against great ones bosses is increased by 25%. It used to be 50%, but it got nerfed a bit. Also, master tactician, using any tactical weapon will increase the damage against great ones by 25%. Tactical combo, 4 seconds after switching or reloading, additional 25% weapon damage. I'm also using status enhancements after hitting a weak spot. Status damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. So if you are hitting constantly weak spots, you have the status damage increased by 25%. Sustained suppression, defeating an enemy with continuous damage, such as burn in our case, increases the continuous damage by 20% for 10 seconds, stackable up to 3 times. So when you're fighting multiple enemies, this will actually increase your damage. And I'm also using the Lone Walker. When fighting solo, medicine usage, speed plus 35%, damage from monster reduced by 30% when HP is below 30%, and damage to monsters plus 20%. Actually, I'm not able to test this 20% damage increase, and I just hope that it worked as it should. Because when shooting the dummy in the base, this doesn't show up anywhere. The damage that I do with this burn build is not even close to the damage that I did with my shrapnel build on the previous server. If you haven't seen my shrapnel build, I have a video on this. Go check it out. But where the boom boom actually shines with the explosive damage from the gloves and also from the weapon is when you are fighting hordes of enemies, because you can trigger chain reaction and have multiple explosions and kill a lot of enemies with fewer bullets. I will try to improve this build, and when phase 4 unlocks on my server, I will be able to test it on pro difficulty in dungeons. And I will also test again the barbecue gloves. So if you don't have the hardy gloves, you can go for the barbecue gloves. These gloves have a unique effect. Burn damage frequency increases with the number of stacks up to 100%. So if you have the maximum number of stacks, instead of triggering once every 0.5 seconds, it will trigger once every 0.25 seconds. So you'll burn faster the enemies. And you can also try using the flame resonance, which will increase the maximum burn stacks by 2, but decreases the duration by 20%. This build is still work in progress, so if you have any questions or tips, leave them in the comment section down below. Making this video took a lot of effort, so a like would be appreciated. And if you enjoy Once Human, subscribe to the channel to be up to date with new videos. Thank you for watching, see you guys next time. Bye bye.